Alright, so you're making the move to Georgia from New York, but you don't know what to expect. Well, I made this move about 15 years ago, and in this video, I'm going to share with you all of the most important things that you need to prepare for in making your move to Georgia from New York. Coming up right now. Hey everyone, welcome back to Living in Atlanta. My name is Mark Brenner, and if you have any real estate needs in the Atlanta area, I want you to give me a call. My team and I help more people relocate to Georgia from out of state than any other broker in Georgia. So if you have any real estate needs in the Atlanta area, we have got you covered. You can book a Zoom call with me using the link in the description below. Call, text, email, whatever you want to do, but we love when our viewers become clients. Okay, so today we're going to continue our series in moving to Georgia from another state, from the most commonly moved from states that I work with clients from. And today is very personal because we're going to talk about moving to Georgia from New York, which I did about 15 years ago. I myself grew up in the Northeast. I grew up in northern New Jersey and in New York in the lower Hudson Valley. I absolutely love the Northeast, but in 2008, life took me to Georgia, a place that I had never expected to be, and it was a huge change for me. I'm going to be really honest. I absolutely hated living in Atlanta, Georgia, coming from New York when I first moved here. I mean, it was so different, from the culture to the weather to the environment and atmosphere. It was really a culture shock. Now, the good news is I can say after 15 years, I genuinely love living in the South. I love living in the Atlanta, Georgia area. So there is hope for you if you've made this change and you're not loving it so far, or if you're very afraid about all the change. Don't worry, there are great things about living in Georgia. I'm going to go through the major differences that I experienced. Now, if you want more of a deep dive about what it's like to live in the Atlanta area, check out my playlists. I talk about every aspect from the cost of living to the weather to neighborhoods. I have home tour videos and budget tour videos. I have neighborhood vlog tours. All the resources that you need to get to know the Atlanta area are on my channel, so make sure you utilize this free information. But today I'm just going to cover some of the major differences, so it doesn't have to be a long video, that I would imagine most New Yorkers and people from the Northeast are going to experience when they make this big life change to living in Georgia. So let's get right into the biggest differences in living in New York and living in the Atlanta, Georgia area. Alright, so one of my biggest challenges when I first moved here was not having my comfort food. Now listen, everyone has different tastes, but wherever you grew up, you had some comfort foods that are always going to be special to you, always going to be foods that you seek to enjoy throughout your life. So for me, that was a great Italian or Jewish deli, right? That was a great bacon, egg, and cheese with salt, pepper, ketchup. An incredible dense bagel with lox and cream cheese, chicken and eggplant parm, maduros, Italian food, Puerto Rican food, Dominican food, Eastern European food, Caribbean food. I mean, New York is truly a melting pot, and it has those staples that you grow up with. Because of that, listen, unfortunately, I hate to tell you, you're really not going to find in Atlanta, even to this day. Okay, now there is some good pizza down here that will definitely hit the spot for you. There are some decent bagels. I have not found a bagel worthy of the title New York bagel, and if you live down here and you feel differently, I just disagree. Sorry, I have not been impressed with a great bagel. I haven't been impressed with a great diner. That's another thing that I grew up with in the Northeast. Just, those diners that are open late and they have a 30-page menu. You can get everything from a BLT to a fish dinner, and it's usually all pretty good. And we still really don't have that in the Atlanta area. We don't really have any good delis down here. I hate to tell you, there's a few places to get decent sandwiches, but you're gonna have to just forget about a great deli, a great bagel, and a few other items. Now, there's great food down here, okay? It's just a little different. My favorite would be Buford Highway, all the ethnic cuisine that you can get along Buford Highway at a very affordable price. So, there's some good eating down in Atlanta, but it's a different type of eating than you're used to in the Northeast. So until I finally open my bacon, egg, and cheese food truck and drive around the city delivering, awesome bacon, egg, and cheese on a Kaiser roll, you're going to be out of luck for a while, I hate to tell you. Now, the next big difference that you're probably going to notice is just the people. Now, listen, people in the South are great. I have many friends and family who are from the South, who live in the South their whole lives now. But I grew up with New Yorkers, and I think they're the best people on earth. I mean, there's something about people from the Northeast. It doesn't have to just be New York. It could even be Boston or Philadelphia. But, there's something about people from the Northeast where they're just the salt of the earth, a lot of people say they seem mean. They don't suffer fools, right? And they don't have time for some of the common courtesies. These are also people who would give you the shirt off their back, right? There's an authenticity to New Yorkers that just makes them my favorite people on earth. So that will be different. There are some New Yorkers down here, so you might find your tribe. And listen, I'm sure you're going to find lots of lovely people, some good old boys in the South. It's a different thing, but just sharing with you, this was a big challenge for me. I miss my people. I miss my New Yorkers. I miss being able to have loud debates without people getting offended. I miss being able to be brash and speak what's on my mind without people thinking I'm angry or a jerk, right? In New York, you can really put out your opinions and people aren't necessarily going to get offended because, we talk loud, we give our opinions, but that does not mean we're bad people. So that will be a bit of a transition for you if you know what I'm talking about. The next huge challenge for me was the pace of living. I didn't grow up in New York City. I grew up in a suburb of New York, but even then there was an atmosphere of societal awareness, not only for yourself to move quickly, but knowing how quickly you move impacts the people around you. And people just don't have that in the South, for better or worse. People are very much just going at their own pace, with less regard for how it may affect the people around them. It's a slower pace of living, right? It's just very different. It's not wrong, but I could see that causing some potential frustration. If you're one of those go, go, go people, like there are a lot of in New York and the Northeast, just prepare yourself. People are not in a rush in the South, even when they are technically in a rush. They can only move so fast in the South. So that could be a frustration for you. I've mostly gotten over it by now, but anyone moving to the South from the Northeast should be aware the people down here move slowly. Another big difference that you'll notice when you make this change is the diversity. Now, the Atlanta area is diverse, New York is diverse, but New York City especially is a real melting pot. I mean, so many different cultures jam-packed into one place makes for a really unique, wonderful, diverse melting pot. Atlanta is just a little bit different. I'm not going to say it's segregated. People are definitely intermingling, but it can't be said it's the same type of melting pot as in New York City just by virtue of it not being that dense and crowded. We're sprawled out. You need to own a car to live here and get around. And so to some degree, you have groups of people that are less intermingled than they would be in the Northeast. You also have a little bit less range of diversity here. You have majority of African American people living here. You have about 48% Caucasian people living here. And then you've got quite a bit smaller Asian and Hispanic demographic, about 15% Asian and 8% Hispanic throughout Atlanta. So it's just a different type of diversity. There are other large pockets of cultures that I haven't mentioned in the Atlanta area. So you should be comfortable. I don't think you need to worry about, as long as you're within, I would say, a couple hours from Atlanta, you don't have to worry too much about feeling like you're out of place necessarily, but it is a different type of diversity than you may be used to. The next big change, of course, will be the weather. This is a positive one in my mind. Now, New York has some great weather. There's nothing like fall in the Northeast, right? It's really a special thing in the Northeast. Autumn, the leaves changing. I think it's the best fall season anywhere in the country. It's different in the Atlanta area. Now, we do have 4 distinct seasons, which is nice. So it's not monotonous like Florida or Southern California, but it's much more mild than New York, okay? Our summers are not going to be more mild. Our summers are going to be long, hot, and humid, but the winter will be a joke compared to what you're used to. It barely ever snows. You might get one light flurry a year. It barely really even gets below freezing too many days a year. So it's a short, kind of cold, rainy winter in the Atlanta area. It's a long, hot, humid summer, but it's an absolutely gorgeous spring and fall in the 60s and 70s with a breeze, tons of sunshine. So I think you'll really appreciate and enjoy the climate here. Now, the next major difference that you're going to want to be aware of course, is really, I would put these together: cost of living, your pay, and your taxes. So generally speaking, your cost of living will be lower here in the South, although not quite as low as it was 5 to 7 years ago, but your buying power for purchasing a home and also your renting power is going to get you much more in the Atlanta area, of course, than it would in New York, one of the most expensive markets in the country. So that's a good thing, but the flip side of that is your pay may be lower. The average pay here is definitely going to be much lower than average pay in New York. Of course, if you have a specialized position, you might be getting a fantastic salary. There are a lot of Fortune 500 and Fortune 1000 companies here, so it could be an opportunity for you to move move up within your company, in which case, you'd be getting better pay with a lower cost of living. If you're starting your career here, you may be starting out at a lower level than you would in New York, but also your expenses are going to be lower. So it's kind of a trade-off in that way. Now, your taxes, particularly your property taxes, are typically going to be much, much lower than what you're used to paying in New York. The average rate in the Atlanta area is about 1%, depending on the value of your home. My property taxes are still less than $2,000 a year, which I think many people in New York would be surprised by. But generally speaking, you're going to be saving a lot of money in property taxes if you own property in the Atlanta area. Another big difference between living in the Atlanta area and living in the Northeast is it's much more religious down here. This is the Bible Belt. People are much more outward and communicative about their religious beliefs and their enthusiasm for that. There's more of a culture of, Sunday being a church day and people going to Bible study and groups, and people of other faiths as well. In the Northeast, of course, there are tons of people and tons of faiths, people for whom that's very important, but it's also a little more progressive in the Northeast, and so in some circles, religion is looked down upon. Now, I don't think this is going to manifest in any way that's really significant for you living here, but it is something that I noticed having grown up in New York, having lived 15 years now in the Atlanta area. Faith is not as taboo as it is in New York, which for many people is going to be a great improvement for living here. Some people who don't share that beliefs, I don't know, maybe they'll feel a little frustrated or annoyed by it. Never really bothered me, but it was a big difference that I noticed just in how outward people were with it and about how integrate it was with their daily lives living in the South. Another huge part of the culture down here is college football. Now, my friends here are always surprised when I tell them I did not grow up watching college football. I think where I grew up, lacrosse was probably more popular among my friends than college football was. I never had those conversations. Of course, in the South, and Georgia in particular, college football is hugely important, part of the culture. Everyone is a fan of a certain team, even if they didn't necessarily go to that college. So you may have to, pick your battles there and what team you want to align yourself with, but that is something that's very important to the people who are living down here. Another big difference is gun culture down here. I've mentioned this in other videos, like moving to Georgia from California, and those differences will be somewhat similar, but the Georgia area has looser regulations on owning a gun. In fact, you do not need to have a permit to own a gun in Georgia, and so you have more people owning guns, have more people conceal and not conceal carry here. Again, it's a big part of the culture, whether it's shooting ranges or people bonding over a shared interest. That might turn some people off who are moving here, that might get some people excited who are moving here who are gun enthusiasts, but either way, it's a big difference that you should be aware of and be prepared for. All in all, if you're coming from the Northeast, if you're coming from New York or New York City, you just have to be prepared for a very different atmosphere and city, okay? Atlanta is a large, sprawled out, not dense city. You need to own a car to get around here. We're a city in a forest, so we're surrounded by trees and green spaces. It's a great spot if you're a nature lover and like outdoor activities. It's a great place for opportunity to start a business or further your career with one of the huge companies who are headquartered here. It's a fantastic place to own real estate. We are growing like crazy, and that is not going to stop anytime soon. So for me, coming from New York to Atlanta, looking back, I see it as a huge opportunity to start a business, to grow, to really be a bigger fish in a smaller pond, maybe more so than you would living in New York. There are major cultural differences, there are major food differences, there are major people differences between the two places. But as with most things in life, if you just keep an open mind, if you're friendly and kind, I'm sure you'll find your people, I'm sure you'll find your food spots, and I'm sure it will grow on you. It really does grow on you living in the Atlanta area. I can say that I love it now after 15 years. There's a ton of opportunity, a beautiful climate, green spaces, nature, plenty of things to do. So I hope you're excited about your move to Georgia for either yourself or you and your family. For a lot of people, it is a great decision. I hope I covered all the major things. If I missed something that you've experienced, please comment below. But thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. And again, I'm your real estate guy. If you need anything in the Atlanta area, I've got you covered. Buying, selling. We have a lot of experience doing this. We have almost 50 5-star reviews on our Google page. Look us up, Living in Atlanta team. We would love to work with you. Either way, please like and subscribe, and I'll see you in my next video.